Hi, this is Sara from SaraRanAwayWithASpoon.com, and I teach kids ages 10 to 15 to bake through online baking classes. And when they're with me baking, they gain confidence and they learn how to use life skills in the kitchen. So today I'm going to show you how to put together a rustic blueberry peach tart. And you can really use a whole bunch of different fruits. It's summertime and the blueberries are amazing right now, so I'm going to be using blueberries, and I got a couple of peaches on Friday that are just about done and they need to be used up, so I'm going to use peaches too. And I have already set aside, I have it here, I have a whole bowl full of blueberries and a few of the peaches. Blueberries are not cut up, but the peaches are all cut up, and they are sitting in a tablespoon of flour and 2 tablespoons of sugar. These blueberries, when you have summer fruit, sometimes it can be really tart and sometimes it can be really just perfect, and I gotta say these blueberries are just perfect, so I'm gonna be using just perfect blueberries. I don't need a lot of sugar. If you feel like your fruit is tart, you could add up to, I don't know, about a quarter cup of sugar and let it sit. If you let it sit for, this has been about 15 minutes, you'll see that it gets a little juicy. So that is good. You want to bring out the juices, but you don't want it to be too juicy. That's why we add a little bit of flour that helps it so that it's not too wet and on your tart. So I've done some prep work and I put things together in advance. And one of the reasons I like doing a tart in the summertime is it's so easy and it can be messy. It doesn't really matter how it looks, and that's great when you're working with kids too, because if they've never worked with dough, it can be tricky. But I've got this dough, and I'm going to take out this layer of parchment paper, and I'm going to just move my camera for a second so you can see my dough. I have it set so that, now my camera's going to slide. It's about 13 inches or so around. I didn't measure it, but I eyeballed it. Let me just tell you a little bit about the dough. I made it this morning, and it takes literally 10 minutes to put together. I used a cup and a half of flour and 2 teaspoons of sugar. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. I might need to look it up. 2 teaspoons of sugar and a half a teaspoon of salt. And to that I added 11 tablespoons of unsalted butter that I cut up, and I used, you can see it back here, I used my stand mixer. You can do it by hand, you could do it with a food processor. I used the stand mixer and mixed the dough together till it's crumbly, probably a minute on very low speed. And then I added in an egg yolk and 3 tablespoons of milk and mixed it till it came together. Then I took some saran wrap and I took the dough onto the saran wrap and then just sort of pressed it together with my hands, this being the part of the hands that I use on the plastic wrap. And I put it together into a shape, pressed on it until it came together into a ball. Then I flattened it down a little bit so it was more of a disc. And then I stuck it in the fridge. And I let it sit probably for an hour. Cold is better. It's easier to work with dough that's cold, especially if it's got butter in it. And then I took it out of the refrigerator, and I wanted to show you this one trick that I have learned how to do. When you have your ball of dough, pretend that's there, you can just bang it with your rolling pin before you start to actually roll. And if you bang it, it helps spread it out a little bit, and it can be cold, and you can do it without having to let it sit for too long. On a day like today, when it's pretty close to 90 degrees, it's hard to keep dough from getting too soft. So if that happens, you can always put your dough back in the fridge and let it rest for a half hour and start again. But my dough is all rolled out, and as I showed it to you before, I did not say that it was ragged, but you can see the edges are pretty ragged, and it's okay. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to show you how to assemble this. So I'll take my fruit and just pile it on. Hopefully the blueberries won't run too far away. Doesn't look like you're able to see this, so I'll show it to you. I'll move the camera once I've got it on here. Basically, I'm just spooning on blueberries, and I have probably 4 cups total of blueberries and peaches, and I had them sitting in a tablespoon of flour and 2 teaspoons of sugar. Oop, I see a stem. I did go through and try and pick out all the stems, so if you have a fruit like blueberry that has stems, you'll want to make sure you get the stems. And I'm pushing all the peaches to the middle so that it will look pretty peachy. Oh, that's bad. Pretty cute when you put the peaches on in the middle and you roll up the edges. I have a few more blueberries in the bowl, then I'll just quickly move the camera and show you what this looks like. So I have my peaches and blueberries. I hope that's something you'll be able to see. Leave me a comment if you're having any trouble seeing that, and I'll change it for next time. I'm grabbing a paper towel because my hands are wet. And I'm basically just going to roll up these edges and pinch the dough together. If the dough is sticking, just kind of peel it up. So I'm finding that some of my edges are thinner than others. And if it's really thin, I'm going to roll it a little extra. So there's a little bit more. And I rolled out my dough between 2 pieces of parchment paper. This is parchment paper. Just ripped it off and rolled it out with my rolling pin. And I did not add any extra flour to it until the very end, and I peeled off the top, and it was I'm going to show it to you. The paper was pretty sticky with dough. So when I peeled it off, I peeled off a little dough, and I took a little bit of flour and I put it on. I sprinkled just a little bit of flour on the top layer of dough, and then I wiped it off with this dry brush. And that's a good thing to be able to do so that you don't have extra flour on your dough. And it'll help with taste a little bit. So then you just roll up these edges. I have one edge here that's really, really thin. So I think I might just take a little dough from this piece that's extra and see if I can squish it in. And because it's so rustic, it really doesn't matter. I'm getting kind of a square shape here. And then I'll push the fruit down so that it's inside of the edges that I've made. And let me take the camera and show you what this looks like. There we go. So very rustic, but looks good. And the final step, I switched the camera around. I think that's a better way to do it. The final step is to just wash the edges of the dough with an egg. So I'm going to crack an egg into this little bowl. Take a fork and just mix up my egg. And then I'm just going to wipe the edges and the top with the egg. This will help get it golden brown. So when I cook this, I'm going to be putting it in the oven. I'll check the recipe. I forgot how long it cooks for. I'm trying to look for the cooking temperature. Sorry, this is not easy to see. 350. Thanks for your patience while I look that up. So we're gonna bake this at 350 and it's gonna cook for about 50 to 55 minutes till it's completely cooked and golden. You could, if you wanted to, take the dough that you made and make smaller tarts. So you could make a couple of tarts, but I find this is the easiest way to do it. That way you're not messing around with the dough too much and you don't need to get it into too many different shapes. Nice and easy as one big one. So I'll take a picture of this after I get the sugar on it. You can top it with really any kind of sugar. I'm going to be using sanding or sparkling sugar. That's what I have. And I'm just going to sprinkle it around just checking where I'm putting it. Yeah, so I'm just going to sprinkle it on top of my blueberries to make it nice and crunchy. I didn't add that much sugar to my blueberries. I'm adding a little bit more now. So think about that as you're making it. If you're going to top it with something like a crunchy sugar like this, you might not need as much in your mixture. Let me turn the camera around and show you what it looks like. And that's my tart. So I'll put it in the 350-degree oven after it's been preheated, and I will cook it for 50 to 55 minutes, checking on it if it seems like I can smell it and it smells done before then. If you're making a tart, you could be using blueberries, peaches, nectarines, apples, pears. What else is good? See if they have any other ideas in the recipe. There's so many different fruits you could put in here. Plums, raspberries, but I would mix raspberries with something like peaches because they're pretty tart. Apricots, so a whole bunch of different options that you could make in your tart. If you see the word galette, it's the same thing. It's just a fancy word for tart. So a rustic tart or a galette, G-A-L-E-T-T-E, sorry, it's a French word, is another word for tart. So if you see that, don't get scared. It's not anything any trickier than what I just showed you. It's just a rustic tart. And that's pretty much it for today. I hope you enjoyed learning how to assemble your tart. And I hope you use up some of that delicious fruit that's out there. And I will see you next time. If you liked this video, leave a comment below and I will be happy to hear from you. You can also visit my website at sararanaway.com and download my free baking guide, Ready, Set, Bake, that will help you get started with baking, lots of baking tips. See you soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.